that correct?
The Republican side has 15 minutes.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise in full support of the extension of unemployment insurance compensation, and I rise also to express my thanks to a number of people in this body. First, as everybody knows, we'll soon be going to adopt a substitute to the unemployment insurance compensation bill by Senator Reid. Senator Reid, the majority leader, has been instrumental in seeing to it that this bill not only passes, but that enhancements are made to this bill to help the U.S. economy and that it's totally paid for and is a net positive to the federal Treasury. And I appreciate more than I can express Senator Reid's hard work to help this take place. Secondly, I want to thank Max Baucus, the chairman of the Finance Committee. Senator Baucus and his staff have been unbelievably cooperative in helping us to find the pay-fors to match and actually exceed the cost of the homebuyer tax credit, which will be extended in this legislation. Senator Dodd, the chairman of the Banking Committee, 3 weeks ago hosted a 3-hour hearing in the committee on the housing tax credit and the housing market, and without his giving us that time to bring forward the issues that are so pressing in our country today, I'm not sure we'd be standing here at all, so I'm greatly appreciative to Senator Dodd. I particularly want to thank Chris Cook on my staff for the work that he's done in helping this to take place. And lastly, but not least, I want to thank Mr. Richard Smith, a private citizen, a person in the housing industry who has dedicated countless hours of his life in the last month to help educate people on the positive effects what we're about to do will take place. And briefly, Mr. President, I want to say the following. We learned about 8 months ago that a tax credit for first-time home buyers worked. It worked to bring back the marketplace in entry-level housing in America, and it helped us to begin to stabilize the housing market, which led us in late 2007 into the difficulties we've experienced over the last 20 months. But extending it is important as long as everybody understands permanent extension would be bad. Extending it to next April, which this bill does, with a closing no later than June 30th, allows the American housing market and first-time home buyers to be able to exercise their right to take taxes that they pay, convert it to equity in the investment in an appreciating asset, and help stimulate what is the rock-solid base of the American economy. We've also added, in addition to the $8,000 credit extension for first-time home buyers, a move-up buyer tax credit of $6,500. And this, I think, is the cornerstone of the substitute that's before us now. Because what it offers is to any previous homeowner who's lived in their home for at least the last 5 years. They have the opportunity to sell that home, invest in a new home, and take up to a $6,500 tax credit. That is going to help us to boost what is the problem in the U.S. housing economy today, and that's what's called the move-up market. It's the gentleman that's transferred from Delaware with Hercules to Brunswick, Georgia, who can't sell his house in Wilmington and can't buy a house in Brunswick because the markets are so frozen and the move-up market is dead. Now he has an opportunity to sell that house and have an incentive for its purchase in Delaware and an incentive to come to reinvest that money in Georgia in a house in Brunswick. It will make a measurable difference over the next 7 months in our economy. We also have raised the means test on income from $75,000 and $150,000, which is in the current credit, to $150,000 and $225,000 in the new bill for both move-up buyers as well as first-time home buyers. Those income thresholds will open the incentive to more Americans and I think will show a measurable increase in the amount of business that takes place. In response to the Internal Revenue Service concerns that were expressed a few months ago on fraud, we put in every single request they made for fraud to see to it the HUD-1 is attached to tax statements, to see to it there's no fraudulent claim of the money, and to see to it IRS has every tool they can to prosecute to the fullest anybody who would abuse this credit. And lastly, we have one exemption to the payback. As the President knows, the credit has to be paid back if somebody sells their house within the first 3 years of occupancy and moves. That's because they're required to own it at least 3 years. But that pay-for is waived, or that payback is waived, if they're a member of the United States military that's redeployed in our military in the United States or overseas. It's just not right for them to respond to our country's call and then penalize them on the tax credit if they used it before by not knowing they would be called or moved again. Again, I want to thank Senator Reid, Senator Baucus. I want to thank Senator Bond for their tremendous work. I want to thank the members of this body for their positive vote of 85-2 on cloture on Monday night. and hopefully what will be a very positive vote tomorrow night to extend and pass the first-time home buyer's credit and add to it the move-up buyer's credit. But I end with this to everybody who has an interest, everybody who thinks it's a good opportunity. It is a great opportunity, but it ends April the 30th for contract date, and it ends June the 30th for closing date. It would not be in the best interest of the United States or of this Senate to extend this credit further. Part of the benefit of a tax credit is the scarcity or the urgency of its sunsetting. This tax credit will sunset on April the 30th of 2010, and it will not be extended. Closing will have to take place by June 30th, or it will not count. And so I urge all Americans who've always dreamed, if they're a first-time home buyer, of having a home of their own, or Americans who've been gridlocked in a failure of our move-up market to actually move up and work, you have a 7-month opportunity that is good for you, and it's good for the United States of America, and it's good for this economy. And I yield the floor by thanking all the members of this body and urging them to vote in favor of the adoption of the substitute and ultimately on the passage of the bill. And I yield back.
Mr. President.
Senator from Rhode Island.
Mr. President, I too want to commend several